Hey, how you doing? Well, it's a late night, and I'm still up, and Beth's gone to bed, and I'm just wondering about a few things, meandering as I do. And one of the one of the threads that always goes through all of the messages that I get from people. Uh, we we get a lot of messages on Facebook, emails. I currently have probably about 18 or 20,000 emails in my inbox. Some of which I will be able to answer, some of which should never be answered, and one of the questions is about being uncertain about whether something is the right thing to do, and if I think about it, I come up with a symbol or a pair of symbols which just about gives you all that you need to judge whether something is the right thing for you to do. Now, based on the idea, the concept that now, which is very popular, and that is that we create our own reality. In other words, the world that we are all individually experiencing at this time was actually created by us, by ourselves. When people go out and they have a bad hair day, they go out and they get into a car, and if they're having a bad time internally, mentally, emotionally, they are actually more. It's a fact that they're more likely to have an accident. I was caught once speeding on Alligator Alley. Yes, there is such a place. There is such a road in the Philippines. Sorry, in Florida, where I lived before I came to the Philippines. Alligator Alley, and it runs down or up or down or across. But anyway, it leads to Miami certainly from Fort Myers in that general direction. And I got caught speeding, and the cop, for a change, it seems to me in America, the cop was not authoritative and vindictive and, hey, I'm going to make you suffer. He actually said, once you start getting into higher speed, he said, I clocked you at 90 when you came over that hill. And he said, it makes sense to realize that if you have a blowout at 90, you probably are not going to survive that. So, what are we going to do? I have to admit that he was right. So what are we going to do, officer, about my speeding? He said, I'm going to give you a ticket, but if you will agree to take a course about alcoholism, about drinking and driving, if you'll agree to take that course, it will not be registered on your driver's license, so you won't gain any points towards losing your license. I said, I'll do it. Now, thinking like I do, I'm not a drinker. Absolutely do not agree with drinking and driving. I had one light beer when we went out to the fiesta the other day. Now, it was a long time before I was willing to think about driving, because coming from California, I did actually have the zero tolerance. So you're going to drive, you just don't drink. So I was well over it by the time I got behind the wheel. And anyway, driving is very slow, I find, in the province, and especially for me. because of all the hazards that are there that I've gone into before about driving in the Philippines, about pigs being possibly being on the road, pigs, cows, goats, dogs, cats, children, people. So driving fast is out anyway. But I went on that course, and one of the things that I saw and learned was that in a way it equates being in a bad mood, having had an argument with any member of your family, your job, and you go out and you are behind the wheel and really pissed about life. It's almost as if it's considered that your judgment will be impaired as much as if you had had a few drinks. Now that's really interesting to me, because while I don't drink, so I'm not affected by that ruling about impaired judgment when you've had a few drinks, I can get behind the wheel and not be calm. And that old expression that people have when they get in a fight about something is, I don't know, he just made me mad. Well, nobody made you mad. The mad was there before the altercation, before anything happened. You were already mad about something, and you simply transferred it to another target. So, how does this all come back to my two symbols, and how to judge whether something that you are possibly about to do, which may affect your reality in the future, how do you judge whether it's the right thing to do? And it actually gets down to this one pair of symbols, if you, for the sake of the argument, will think this way for a moment. And that's these two symbols. So, going up or going down. Now, for a long time, if ever I spoke about how to choose the kind of channel, the kind of program, channel, blog, movies that you would choose, I link them in the same kind of way as choosing your friends. And when you choose your friends, you choose them on the basis usually of shared opinions and views, even if the sharing is the agreement to disagree. So you can actually have really good friends with whom you disagree about football, about cricket, about music, about the government, about all of these things. You can disagree strongly with a good friend and still come out good friends, because there's the willingness to allow the other person to have their opinion, even though it differs from yours. So back to how you decide whether something is right, on the basis of my simple sketch, which is an arrow going up or one going down. Now, when I first came to Bohol, I was introduced to someone who became a friend of sorts, and for the first time ever, I had to analytically decide that I'm not going to have anything to do with this person. And the reason for that was that whenever I was visited by this person, which used to happen often, unexpected visits, and then 1 or 2 hours of listening to a viewpoint that was just so wrong for me. See, because it's not just whether something is about football or cricket or the government. It's also about a viewpoint, a view of life. And if that person's view of life is from your perspective, so wrong that it doesn't work for you. You can meet someone who other people will get along very well with, but if they are someone who have what I call abrasive views of life, the particular person that I'm talking about, I fired him. I just made it clear that I was not going to have any more time in his company because it was bad for me. So later I happened to bump into the person in the town, and in one exchange it confirmed everything that I'd ever thought about that person. I said, "Wow, small talk, guys, small talk. It was a beautiful day." I remarked that. Well, it really is a beautiful day. This brings out, I've seen so many beautiful women today. And he said, "I've seen so many ugly women." And that kind of summed it all up. Does the arrow take you up, or does it take you down? So, looking at what each arrow would mean, and I made what does, sorry, I'm kicking the strand. So what does the arrow going up do? It's traveling, isn't it? An arrow indicates a movement in a certain direction. An arrow is not a stationary thing. It takes you somewhere. Well, where does an arrow going up take you? Now, before I go into where the arrow going up takes you, let's have a look at the other stuff so that we end with the arrow going up. So going down. Where's our arrow? Let me see. There's our arrow going down. Okay, so we're going down. What does it mean? What kind of emotions will be associated with the arrow that takes you down? So something crops up, some situation where you have to make a decision. A person that you have to decide whether you're going to be friends, or whether you're going to see him, or whether you're going to associate in any way with him, go into business with him or her. Are you going to marry the person? Are you going to be, will you love that person, male or female, with the appropriate love, okay? What does it really mean? Well, the only way that we can describe things, if we're communicating from one person to another, unless, of course, you can go DI, which is in a musical way is a direct inject, and which means that you would have one cable going from his head and the other cable going to yours, metaphorically speaking, and you would know what each other was thinking. Meantime, we are stuck with words. So, going down, and the words associated with going down, these are just some of the ones that I wrote down. Going down in a word or in a phrase would mean this: going down, stopped. So if you're going down, you're going to be stopped. You say to someone, "I think it would be a good idea if I did this," and they say, "No, it's a lousy idea." Stopped. Arrow is going down. Stopped. So let's whip through them and then talk about them later. Stopped. Looking back. Taking, as in taking, rather than giving. Vengeful. Stopped. Lost. Afraid. Hopeless. Slowing down. Cautious. Stressed. Confused. Weak. Sad. Holding back. Mean. Critical. judgmental, worried, afraid. All of these things would be associated with the arrow that takes you down, right? So, when you look at anything, when you look at a person, where's the arrow? Is it going down or is it going up? And that would be the most simple way to judge whether the person, business, game, country, way of life, religion, God, do they take you up or down? It's a simple thing. And how would you know? What are you feeling? Sigmund Freud, and I'm paraphrasing now, Sigmund Freud said, in moments where you have to decide whether something is right, there's the head, intellect, the thought, analytical thinking, and there's the heart. And he said, always, in the final analysis, go with the heart. And so, all of those words would be associated with the arrow going down. So, when you're faced with planning, when you're faced with looking at whether something is good for you, when you're faced with, should you do this? Is it right for you? How do you feel? Is your emotional arrow going up or is it going down? So, looking at the other side, what's the arrow that goes up and where is that taking you? Boy, this is a better trip. The arrow going up leaves you tolerant. It indicates progress. You're moving on. You're accelerating. You're getting faster. Beautiful. Calm. Enthusiastic. Strong. Happy. Energetic. Hopeful. Generous. Giving. These would all be words that you would associate with the arrow that goes up. So, where's your arrow going? Up or down? Are you hopeful or hopeless? Are you feeling that you can move on? Or are you feeling stopped? Are you hopeful for the future? Are you brave about what is to come? Or are you afraid? Does what's been presented to you to judge for you as to whether it's right or wrong for you, does it leave you feeling better or worse? Many times I've left someone's company and I'm full of plans. I'm going to do this. Boy, I'm better than I thought, because some friend has said, you know, why don't you do this? I always thought you'd be great at doing that. I'm not talking about someone who is patting you on the back, but you know, the mutual back slapping. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about someone who says, you know, I'm sure that you could do more than you do, because you're better than you think. So many times I go into a store in the Philippines, and if it's not a store that seems to have a lot of foreigners coming in, then you might get two young girls behind a bar in a bakery. Say in a bakery, you go in and you want some bread, and there's two girls in there, and they're both young, and they look at you, look at me, oh no, foreigner, and then they look at each other to see who's going to come and risk having a nosebleed to talk to me. And when they talk, I wish, as I tell them, I wish that I could speak Visayan as well as you speak English, because you are much better than you think. What's the arrow doing that I'm giving them? Not just what I'm giving them. Their arrow is going up. They're feeling better. When I leave, I haven't I haven't been stroking them, say, oh, you're much better, don't, so I'm not doing that. I'm making an actual truthful observation, because in 99 times out of 100, Filipinos are better at English than they say. So I'm simply telling the truth and leaving someone feeling better than they did. And it works every time. I have arrows that I keep stored in my limited vocabulary for Visayan, and they are ikaw ay guapa, which means you are beautiful. Ikaw ay guapo, which means you are handsome. I have questions, very few, but I can say, akong, let me see. Well, if someone asks me, am I married, I can say, akong asawa guapa, which means my wife is beautiful. And people laugh when I say that. And my next thing in English is to ask them, who do you think taught me that? And of course they say, your wife. And everybody feels good, and the arrows are all pointing up. So if it is that we are responsible for creating the life that we want to have, then it's important to know whether something is right for you, whether in fact you are giving yourself the life that you really should deserve. Now here's a bittersweet way to find out whether you are entertaining too many arrows going one way or the other. Are the arrows that you have in your life, are they taking you down, or are they taking you up? Are you winning or are you losing? And I had a friend who we were talking about this, and I said to him, for instance, what do you tell me what you deserve in life? What do you deserve in life? And he said, well, I deserve to have a nice truck. I'm a good carpenter. I deserve to get work where people appreciate me and pay me what the wages that I should be given. And I should, because I'm a good carpenter, I should be doing good work, and I should be able to live in a nice apartment or even a house. I should have these things to have someone who loves me and this kind of thing. And this was the picture that he painted as to what he thought he should deserve. Now the problem with that is that it's not what you think at a certain intellectual level what you deserve. It's what deep in the heart, which is associated with your sense of personal worth. Now, what he actually deserved by his own estimation was what he had. So the question would be, looking at what you have, tell me what you deserve. And he drove a piece of crap truck. He didn't have a girlfriend who respected him, so he didn't have love in his life. And he was living on a building site of a house that he was gradually remodeling, and he was allowed to live there while he was working. So he didn't actually have a nice place to live. That is what he, in his heart of hearts, considered that he deserved. And it's a hard, bitter pill to swallow when you ask yourself, what do I have in my life that indicates that my feeling of self-worth is equal to what I should have. Now, your feeling of self-worth comes from, if you remember the movie Pinocchio, when Pinocchio was brought to life by the fairy, there had to be some way to know whether he was going to do the right thing. Well, he didn't have a mind with a conscience, so he was given Jiminy Cricket. And Jiminy Cricket was his conscience. That voice, when he was going to do something, the voice that said, this is not for you. This is not what you should be doing. And Jiminy Cricket knew that Pinocchio, at a certain stage in the movie, was being a bad boy. So his opinion of Pinocchio was not so good. And that is what we have as a conscience, that we know there's no hiding from ourselves what the truth is about what we do and how right or ethical or whether we have integrity, or there's no hiding from ourselves. When we close our eyes to sleep at the end of the day, there's only us in there and there's no hiding. So get your arrows going in the right direction and you will ultimately create the life that you really want. That's a simplistic way to look at it, but if you're in doubt, sometimes having a simplistic way to look at it is the way out of the confusion. You take one thing and you work on that one thing. Remember, I think it was called The Cowboys, and Jack Palance was the ruthless boss of the cattle drive. And he said, it's just down to one thing. When you get that one thing, you're good. And of course Billy Crystal said, and what is it? He said, that's the thing. You have to find it. In other words, we're always down to creating our own reality. Then I've spoken too long again. Hope you're still with me. Thanks for listening.